Hey, how are you all? This is Greg Lewis, the city manager here in Lebanon, New Hampshire. I want to welcome you to Lebanon in Depth, and today we're going to devote the entire show to a proposal that I am placing before the City Council and before the community of Lebanon as your city manager to look at a pilot. This is a pilot that's going to be something to help guide us financially and operationally over the next 3-year period. I guess the question is, what is a pilot? And I think the first thing about it is trying to figure the definitions. There's a number of definitions of a pilot. A pilot is generally thought of to be kind of a tentative model for future development. It's experimental or it's a trial undertaking prior to a full-scale use. It can be a preliminary or an experimental test or trial. It's a guide to lead others or conduct a journey, and it's usually a journey over a difficult course. And the reason that we need a guide is we have to lead ourselves and others, and we have to go through this journey. And for us in Lebanon, the journey is towards sustainability in the Lebanon Master Plan, which I've talked about on the show before. The Master Plan is a comprehensive plan to implement the community vision for the year 2030. It was adopted by the Lebanon Planning Board on March 26, 2012, and by the Lebanon City Council on April 18, 2012. It provides, the Master Plan is a wonderful document, and it doesn't gather dust in our world of the city of Lebanon. We live and breathe it, and we want you to share with us the joy of having an actual plan that's a working, livable document. And in the moment, we can do many things to help our community become a sustainable community. Right now, we have some 769 outcome strategies and action items in that plan. Of the 769, 567 have been identified as steps that are required to achieve the vision of the master plan. Of those 567 steps, to date, we have 326 have had some work. So, that's a pretty good deal. 500 things in the pike, and 300 or more have been worked on, and 12 of them have been completed. It's tough sledding in the world we live in. We hope this pilot that we bring before you in the proposals for the consideration of the City Council and its consideration of the entire community will help us. Now, we all know Lebanon continues to be a vibrant community. It's a beautiful community. Every time I look in the downtown area, every time I look around us in our various villages, it's a vibrant and welcoming city and that it encourages learning, embraces diversity. It's a mix of accessible housing, jobs, and educational opportunities that combine to create a livable city. What that does is that stimulates growth and it engenders innovation. What we have is kind of convergent, established neighborhoods, which we are now calling villages. And what the purpose of the villages is to provide comfort, to give comfort and to give safety while you're at home. And that we want to offer to the villages the connectedness of a community we all, I think, wish we could achieve. A place where we celebrate the cultural and recreational activities available to us. And we are a very strong resource in the state. And we have city people enjoying living here, and we have people enjoy coming here and visiting. And the nature of Lebanon should be shaped through this master plan process with the engagement of you all in the community. And we should do it thoughtfully and responsible leadership. We need to work in partnership with the residents and businesses. We've got to coordinate everything we do so we can have a sustainable vision for our region. Going forward, this requires investments. And the investments that we have been making in the last couple of years have been a matter of survival. We've had these 2 survival years in 2012 and 2013. Those years, we're just trying to get a handle on things, trying to do the assessments, the due diligence that was required. And we had to reduce some of our positions in the organization, trying to provide a footprint that's a little more workable. We're looking at different ways of doing business. And now we come out of the 2-year survival program with a program in the pilot that it calls for investment. And the investment is basically looking forward. And looking forward, there are 3 things in the pilot. The first thing is really the legal thing of adopting the investment for 2014. The other 2 are what projected investments for 2015 and 16. So this is the first time in the history of the Lebanon budgeting process that we take a look at a 3-year cycle, which is the 3-year pilot, and not just a 1 year. In this day and age, we just can't live year to year. We have to think broader, think forward. And going and looking at that, and you look at the kind of the rub in terms of what the investment costs might be, and what we've found in terms of making investments versus survival, the investment that is called upon is a pattern of a 3.5 increase in the municipal tax rate. This 3.5 is showing initially in the legal document that's being considered here, and we'll have public hearings on it, having budget meetings on it in the month of November. The one down the road is the projected one. If things kind of stay in the present course, it's probably, again, 3.5. And we expect that there'll be scrutiny with regard to that kind of thing in terms of that amount of money. But really you can't be a sustainable community without investing. I mean, you have to invest in things, and you have to invest, and the things that we invest in a city are invest in the people. We invest in the people that work for the city. We invest in the people who the city serves. So all the way around, it's a big people equation. We also need to invest in the places that we operate in and do, whether it's the city or in villages where the neighborhoods are operating. We also have to look at investing in the tools we have, because the tools are rapidly changing, because tools are essentially technology now. And technology is a pretty good buy, in terms of all the investments we can and the resources it takes, is that technology is probably the best buy of all right now. And finally, we need to invest in the infrastructure. Our city has experienced a kind of end-of-life cycle of the infrastructure in the city. And of course, I think it's obvious to everyone. When you have you build infrastructure 30 to 50 years in the past, and you bring it to date currently, that infrastructure has kind of worked its natural life cycle out. At that point, we have to, and if there isn't a study program that addresses that issue as you go along, when you reach that point of end of life cycle, that's when it clicks in. The CSO, which is the separation of water and sewer project, has been probably the big investment. It is according to an EPA consent order. Now that's something where the city, we had agreement with regard to the order and negotiated in terms of trying to achieve compliance. Now that's a regulatory issue and a regulatory cost incurred by the city. But that takes a big hefty chunk out of what the resources of the city have to offer. And so we have these other parts of the city where the infrastructure is also run out its life cycle, and they have to be dealt with. And so we're trying to triage that. We'd like to stay on schedule in the infrastructure with the CSOs, and we will, and right now we are, and that would mean by the end of the decade, we would be completing that. The last project is 2018. Now, once we finish that piece, then we'll have more things under our control and less of the regulatory imposition of the CSO program. And we'll have to continue to triage what investments we make in what infrastructure. The total investments that are called for, and looking at the 2014 actual, I'll round it off to $6 million, an increase in terms of what the investment is asked of the community in the city. What that is, in terms of $6 million, is $5 million of that $6 million is for the infrastructure. So the other three areas, the people, the place, and the tools, is about a $1 million investment. Now, why do we do this? Why do we invest in things? Because we can't remain status quo, because the world is not stopped. It is very unpredictable. It is very insecure. There are all these trends that you all and I see in terms of the economy, in terms of the political functioning of our upper levels of government and federal and state level. It shows up in shutdowns or sequesters, or it shows up in a death by a million cuts in funding that are kind of dribble out over a period of time. It shows about the lack of grant monies. All these things show, well, the bottom line, I've said it before on the show, the cavalry is not coming from Concord and the cavalry is not coming from D.C. We need to circle the wagons that we have here, pull together as a community and not pull apart, and we need to support the investments. Now, what we're going to do as an organization in support of those investments is that we're going to take the entire community into the question of what is the outcome of sustainability. Every individual, every neighborhood, every village, and every stakeholder must work together to devise a collaborative way to generate revenues in support of the project. There are the two sources of revenues in around here are the public, which really boils down to almost a sole source property tax system. Now, that sole source property tax system probably was a system that was adequate during the agrarian economies during agricultural-based economies, during more dispersed economies in a rural nature. But when you have an urban economy and then you have a mixed-use urban economy, and you start watching the economy sprawl about over the history, what that creates is costs, and we've been doing studies, but it seems my common sense judgment is that it was thought, the theory was you raise the value of the property through all the investments in the developments, and that therefore that will spread the taxes that have to be met because of what the budget is, and they'll spread it, and that'll keep everyone's taxes down. Well, that just doesn't ring true, because the many costs that are incurred by the local jurisdictions are far rising by people and persons and companies coming in and out of the community on a regular basis. We have an influx of 35 to 40,000 people per day, on a 13,000 to 15,000 community. We have very high economic activity. We are very lucky in one way, but it's kind of a two-edged sword. The costs of public safety, the costs of public works, all are rising. They rise faster than what a property tax system produces. So we've got to try to figure out the private side of the equation, how the privates, in a real civic sense, not in a coercive or mandatory sense, but in a real civic sense, can come together and find ways of meeting the public outcomes that we want in our community, and participate in that with us in the public side, in a public-private partnering to see what we could do about covering the costs of the outcomes that we need to produce in order to have a successful, sustainable community. In the issue, and I can't say it more clearly, the economy is unsteady as the national and global political and economic winds has changed to and from the shutoffs to the default. Although the state of unemployment around here is kind of hanging pretty good in some perspectives, with the area of Lebanon being at 3.1% in terms of unemployment. So you could say that Lebanon is doing a pretty fair job, but it's providing a lot of demand on the services that we have, and that there is still need for other jobs. And one of the problems is affordable housing, and trying to have affordable housing. Transportation system is probably the biggest challenge we have. Now, the city is, in terms of this pilot, we're taking through what was formerly kind of a regular budgetary process that's required by statutory law. And what we're really trying to do is transform it, move to a culture that is outcome-based. The public, we as a community come together. We come together and we don't pull apart. And we designate as a group, as our culture, as our communities in our various villages, that we think it is in the best interest of all concerned to make an investment to produce outcomes that are beneficial and necessary for our quality of life and our day-to-day living, and to meet our basic needs so that we can be a sustainable community. And to do this, we have to have community engagement. You probably have noticed community engagement ideas and practices that have been evolving and intensifying during the last year and a half. We want to be as engaged in the community as we can. And the investments will include what we have been doing with the community conversations, many of you have been attending, and the walkabouts, many of you have joined us in walking your neighborhoods and your streets. You'll be shown in the Citizen Academy where 27 of you joined us to participate in the Citizen Academy. We'll look at having conversations, and it's all going to be about how we're going to work better together, engage the community together, how we're going to have good stewardship, good physical stewardship. How can we plan this? How can we have excellent planning? And then economic vitality. We have to preserve. There's really great economic vitality in here. We have some good nonprofit institutions and some for-profit institutions, just a world class. And we need to have that protected, and we need to see how we can support that together. And from the private sector, we need to understand how they think we best could help them and be supportive of them. For our entire community, we need to have sufficiency and resiliency. Sufficiency means I have enough to meet my basic needs, whatever they are in our community. But resilience and resiliency means that I have to be able to meet that today, be sufficient today, but I got to meet it tomorrow, and I got to meet it the day after tomorrow. And many of us have seen this already, the difficulty of trying to meet the following days. Those who experienced directly the storm imposition, which was really, I just felt so badly about it, of a microburst coming down on a particular road, or Slayton Hill Road, and then down below to Dulac and Tannery, and then in various other places in our city. But this is the future we got. So we just have to face it up and say this is the future we have, and we've got to invest in it, just as our forefathers and foremothers brought us together and said, we're going to face the future together, and we're going to figure this out. We must have, that physical stewardship. We want to keep streamlining our administration. We must do this by keeping our workforce limited. So we're not trying to expand a great workforce, but we are going to reconfigure our workforce, existing workforce, keeping the same number of positions, but we'll be working on a regular basis in trying to evaluate, making sure we have the right structures, the right positions, the right way of delivering customer services. Our deal is about being flexible, being friendly, being fast, and being focused on customer needs. We're migrating to that. We're working on that, but we're not perfect by any means, and maybe we'll never be perfect, but we need to move toward those types of goals. And in terms of, so we want to be lean administratively, but we want to put most of the money into the effort of public safety, because we got to have a safe and secure community. We got to put it in our public works, which is the infrastructure and the sense of place we have. That's very, very important too. The pilot we have is going to be very involved in the capital planning, as always we've had, but it's really going to be looking at these things. And in addition to the separation of water and sewer, what is called the CSO project, we want that pathway between downtown Lebanon and downtown West Lebanon to come about. And that's going to be a multimodal approach along mechanics from the downtown Lebanon to the downtown West Lebanon, over Sim Hill, around and looking at the new development in Iron Horse. It'll involve the Muskoma Greenway. It'll involve interconnection, so you'll be able to travel on a pathway by vehicle, by transit. We're working with Advanced Transit on this, and by bike or by walking. And so Bed Pike will be there. We wanted to have it green in terms of green open space and green space as we go. We want mixed use along the way that the community can support. All these concepts will all be vetted and are being vetted right now with regards to how that design be created We got to manage our debts. This is difficult having a debt load, but these projects are for many years. They will have lasting effects. So multiple generations have to be part of the equation. So in order to tackle this large of a picture, it has to be stretched over a period of time and can't solely be placed in one particular window of time. And so that's where it comes into bonding. At the same time, we want to manage our capital reserves, always being lean and always looking to see if we can use capital reserves. Fund balance management is equally important. Capital reserves are dollars we have set aside for capital, but the fund balance is, as things flow out, the costs and the expenditures, revenues, they have fluctuation and results in reserves. And the City Council has set some really good standards for preserving the bottom line. Is a rainy day fund. It's a fund that would help cash flow us in an emergency, would help take care of emergency circumstances. And then that which is over, we will allocate so that it's put to good use to try to hold the property tax rate at a level piece. We don't want to spike the property tax level. Excellent planning is everything we're going to be about. We want it to be desirable for residents and for all businesses and all stakeholders that live and work in Lebanon and are trying their best to make Lebanon the best place ever. Equilibrium is really what I like to talk about in messaging, is that we want an equilibrium. That doesn't mean an equality, but there's so much diversity in town. I have my arrow pictures. We got many arrows in many directions. And what we really want to do with that is we want those arrows to be very robust and continue. We want that diversity is highly important. The entrepreneurial spirit. We want the sense of protection and living in our current environment and the cultural and recreational uplifting that brings our lives to a higher level. But we want that all to kind of happen in bringing arrows together so that the resources that we have in the public kind of sole-based property tax system and the private, which is many different types of pots, to pull together and try to move forward to shared effort with regard to people, with regard to the places we have, with regard to the tools we have, and with regard to our infrastructure. Economic vitality, we're meeting with the private sector. Really the leaders in this, I am so committed to the private sector being the leaders in economic vitality and following and understanding what they believe takes to be a cool community for economic vitality. To attract and bring in our present uplifting millennial generations to these people. I know them. My two children are part of that. And they're just bright and talented, and we need to keep them in our community, and we need to have them with us so they can join us. We have some of us who are more mature and have been around quite a few years. We need your help, and so we want that to be an important part of the equation. What's needed here is what will work here to make things go. We want to have entrepreneurial thinking. We know that the private enterprise has a lot to give us in terms of understanding how to be mission driven. There's so much business planning acumen and wisdom here. We want to have that. Plus our local entities are really, they're thinking globally and they're doing globally. And we want to know how they work national and global perspectives and how they see we might fit in. They also have a great deal of technology expertise, and they have and the financial resources that might be available from them to move toward meet some of these outcomes, because the outcomes if met would be good for everyone. As we go through, and in the last few minutes I have today, public safety is a great big thing for us. We can't do any better than to be safe and secure in our community. And this pilot invests in the police and the fire protection. We're going to encourage everything in terms of grant writing and fundraising and trying to develop and support our emergency response and recovery plans. Because of all this uncertain weather, there's climate change, but then it manifests itself in extreme weather conditions, the climate change that's going on. And so we have to have a recovery plan that will deal with man-made and natural disasters that might come our way. We've experienced a tropical storm, we've experienced microbursts, These are phenomena that will return, and we would need to have everybody have a plan. We want to have everybody in our community have a plan. If you're an individual, family, if you're a business, if you're a village, let's have plans. And we're going to have one overlaying community plan for response and recovery to whether it's man-made or whether it's natural disasters caused by all this uncertainty in events. The thing I end with the show today with is the helicopter flyover. Of course, in Vietnam, I happen to, being in the 1st Air Cavalry in the Veterans Day coming up, it brings my memory back to hanging my feet over the edge of a helicopter flying low. And when you're in those helicopters, it's amazing what you can see. But let's imagine taking a helicopter ride in 2016 at the end of the pilot. I mean, what we would see at the end of the pilot, we'd see a Citizen Academy with about 9 alumni. We'd have a digital-based city hall. We'd hope to have a community foundation where we bring privates together to help provide funding for the community as well as control and be trustees for the funding itself. We'll have a Comcast franchise agreement for the community. Everything will be about teams. We'll have succession planning in all our cities. We'll have completed the Muskoma Greenway. We'll have a streetscape planning, and we'll have a Sam Hill Community Center. We'll reduce our energy consumption. We'll continue to process our zoning amendments. Many of our projects, Alteria Project, River Park, Iron Horse, all will be moving through their design and construction stages. What we want to do is that we want sufficiency and resilience everywhere for every individual family, neighborhood, or the city. We're going to have a better general assistance benefit program. We're going to help any eligible applicant. We're going to help them based on their needs and the resources available. We're going to have citywide, neighborhood, village-based emergency response. We're going to have a lot of good planning for water and wastewater, and our emergency management is going to have a great recovery plan. Now, if I took my last thing was I got up and I went out to 2030. I took my helicopter ride, probably on a lot faster helicopter. And what we'd have there is we'd have Lebanon be the city of fountains. Can you imagine all the beautiful fountains we have and how beautiful they could be if they were further developed? The 120 corridor is going to be fully aligned. It's going to be moving. Heck, we're going to have a tram bus lane. We're going to have a wildlife corridor. The 12A route is going to be walkable, bikeable, shuttle-driven. We're going to have some roundabouts here and there, maybe even one at exit 19. There'll be pocket parts everywhere. We're going to remediate the site at the Westboro Yard, and it's going to be the center of downtown West Lebanon, a beautiful recreational area. Scenic corridor will be overlaid and will be serviced by very high-speed digital telecommunications. We'll look at all our facilities. Now that's my helicopter ride, just Greg Lewis. I think each one of us have to look at what your helicopter ride would be. If you could think ahead like this and think in 2016, if we could make some investments, how could we better our community? How could we better those things for ourselves and our neighbors? Look out at 2030. Let's complete the master plan and see what you think that city should look at in the helicopter ride that you take. Everyone's helicopter ride will be different. It'll have some variations, but we need to build consensus to live with a collective vision of what it would be like to overview our city in future flyovers, and so that it would be indeed a sustainable community. We hope you pay special attention on our website to the idea of our pilot. It'll be discussed in November and into December. It's an unusual thing. It's not a usual way of doing business, but these are not usual times. So therefore we have to do things that kind of challenge us to think higher and better and see if we can stretch and see if we can meet the challenge of a sustainable community that is both sufficient to all and that we're resolute and that we have fanatical discipline to be always resilient, to protect ourselves, our families, our children, our neighborhoods, and our city. Thank you.